Imagine a knock at your door. It is not a friend. It is not family. It is the police. They have come for you. They say your name. They tell you that you are under arrest. You ask them why. You ask what you have done. They tell you a crime has been committed. A terrible, violent crime that has shocked the entire community. They believe you are the one responsible. You try to explain. You tell them they have the wrong person. You were somewhere else. You have an alibi. But your words feel empty. They fall on deaf ears as cold steel cuffs close around your wrists. This is not a bad dream. This is the beginning of a real-life nightmare, a terrifying journey into a justice system that can sometimes get it horrifyingly wrong. This is a story about a man who was accused of a crime he swore he did not commit. The evidence seemed to stack up against him. Witnesses pointed their fingers. The police were confident. The media painted him as a monster, a cold-blooded criminal hiding in plain sight. He was arrested, charged, and his life was turned completely upside down. He lost his freedom. He lost his reputation. He was facing years, maybe even a lifetime, behind bars. His family was devastated. His friends were shocked. How could the man they knew be capable of something so awful? He insisted on his innocence, but in the court of public opinion and in the eyes of the law, he was already guilty. In this story, we will dive deep into a case that seemed open and shut. We will explore the chilling details of the crime that set this whole ordeal in motion. We will examine the investigation, the arrest, and the mounting case against a man whose life was hanging by a single thread. The atmosphere is tense. It is spooky. It is filled with uncertainty and fear. Every piece of footage you will see is either real, public domain material, or stock media, carefully chosen to immerse you in the dark reality of this case. This is not just a story. It is an experience, a journey into the heart of a legal labyrinth where the truth is buried deep. We will set the scene. We will introduce the key players, and we will leave you with a promise. A twist is coming. A shocking, unexpected turn that will challenge everything you think you know about this case. The central question is not just about guilt or innocence. It is about the very nature of evidence itself. How can something we see with our own eyes be wrong? How can a system designed to find the truth sometimes create a lie? Prepare yourself for a story where justice is blind, and the only thing that can make it see again is a piece of evidence no one ever expected to find. The man at the center of our story stood alone. He was isolated, trapped in a cell while the world outside decided his fate. The case against him was built on a foundation of seemingly solid proof. Eyewitness testimony can be incredibly powerful in a courtroom. When someone points at you and says, "That's him. That's the one I saw," it can feel like a nail being hammered into a coffin. The initial investigation collected statements, gathered physical clues, pieced together a narrative that all led to one person. The police, under immense pressure to solve the crime and bring peace back to a frightened community, felt they had their man. Every report filed, every interview conducted only seemed to solidify their conclusion. But what if that conclusion was wrong? What if the foundation of their case was built not on solid rock, but on shifting sand? Mistaken identity is a terrifying possibility within our justice system. It happens more often than we would like to believe. A fleeting glimpse in a dark alley, a face seen under extreme stress, the power of suggestion during a police lineup. These small human errors can snowball into a catastrophic failure of justice. A weak defense, unable to challenge the prosecution's story effectively, can leave an innocent person with nowhere to turn. The accused in our story faced exactly this. He was a whisper against a storm of accusation, his claims of innocence drowned out by the confident voices of authority. This documentary will take you beyond the headlines and into the heart of the investigation. We will show you how initial evidence can be misleading. We will explore the psychology behind witness misidentification and the immense pressure that can lead to flawed conclusions. We will ask the hard questions. Was there a rush to judgment? Were other leads ignored? Was the evidence ever as strong as it appeared on the surface? We want you to feel the chilling reality of being trapped in a system that is convinced you are someone you are not. Ultimately, this is a story about how evidence can change everything. It's a tale of a single, forgotten detail that holds the power to shatter a conviction and rewrite history. We promise a twist, and that twist comes in the form of a video, a recording that lay hidden, unseen, and overlooked. This footage will force investigators, lawyers, and you, the viewer, to re-examine every single fact of the case. Who is truly guilty? And how can a simple recording unravel a complex web of lies and mistakes to finally reveal the truth? The answers are waiting, locked away in the frames of a video that proves one man's innocence. It happened on a Tuesday, a day like any other in the quiet suburban town of Maple Creek. The sun was setting, long, deep shadows stretched across manicured lawns, silent streets. Children had been called inside for dinner. Life felt predictable, safe, comforting. But as darkness fell, that comfort was shattered, not in a dark alley, not in a bad part of town, but in a place where everyone felt secure, a local convenience store, the kind of place you stop for milk, or a newspaper. It became the scene of a terrifying robbery and assault, the kind of violence Maple Creek only saw on the news. A lone masked armed figure entered just before closing. The clerk, Sarah Jenkins, working her usual evening shift. The attacker was swift and brutal. They demanded money from the register. It did not end there. The robbery escalated into a violent assault. Sarah left unconscious, severely injured on the floor. The attacker vanished into the night, taking the town's sense of security. First responders found chaos and bloodshed. The news spread like wildfire. Neighbors whispered it to each other. Fear gripped the town. Doors once left unlocked were now bolted. Parents held their children tighter. Smiles were met with suspicion. Police were under enormous pressure. They had to find who did this. The investigation began, a frantic search for clues. They dusted for fingerprints. They searched for footprints. They hunted for any small mistake the attacker had made. The town waited, holding its breath. The only one who could answer was Sarah Jenkins. After days in hospital, she regained consciousness. Her memory was hazy, fragmented by trauma. But she remembered a few things: the attacker's height, their build, most importantly, their eyes. She told investigators the mask shifted for a moment, a split-second glimpse in the harsh fluorescent light. In that second, she saw a face she believed she could identify. That one moment set in motion a chain of events that would ruin an innocent man's life. The police had a description. It was not much to go on. A man of average height, medium build. But they had something more powerful: an eyewitness. Sarah Jenkins, recovering from her injuries, was determined to help. Investigators sat with her for hours, gently probing her memory. They showed her hundreds of photos from their database, a seemingly endless parade of faces. She looked at each one carefully. Fear, determination. She shook her head again and again. None of them were right. The eyes were wrong. The shape of the face was wrong. Then, they showed her another set of photos. This time, from local yearbooks. She flipped through the pages, her finger tracing over smiling yearbook faces. Suddenly, she stopped. Her breath caught.
She pointed a trembling finger at one picture. "That's him," she whispered. "Those are the eyes." The picture belonged to Carlos de Leon.
A former resident, graduated from the local high school a decade earlier. He had no criminal record, just a normal guy. Based on that ID, police zeroed in on Carlos de Leon. They pulled up his driver's license photo.
He matched the general description. The victim had identified him. The pressure to arrest was immense. Media ran daily stories about the Maple Creek monster. The town demanded action. In the rush, investigators may have overlooked eyewitness fragility. The power of suggestion is subtle but dangerous. Sarah was confident. She picked him out again from a lineup. She said she was 100% certain.
They had no physical evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, no weapon. All they had was Sarah's word. The testimony of a sympathetic victim can be the most compelling evidence. The investigation now had a single target. The full weight of the law was about to fall on Carlos de Leon. A man unaware his life was about to be destroyed. It was early in the morning, just before dawn. Carlos de Leon was at home, with his wife, with their young daughter. He was getting ready for his construction job, a routine he had followed for years. He was a family man. He worked hard. He paid his taxes. He had never been in trouble with the law. His world was small, simple, happy. He could never have imagined the horror that was about to unfold. The sudden, forceful knock on his front door sounded like an explosion in the quiet morning. It was not the knock of a neighbor, or a delivery person. It was heavy, official, demanding.
"Carlos de Leon, you are under arrest for the robbery and assault of Sarah Jenkins."
He stared, completely bewildered. He had no idea who Sarah Jenkins was. He had not been to Maple Creek in years. He tried to tell them. He tried to explain they had made a terrible mistake. His protests were ignored. His wife stood behind him, crying in disbelief. They pushed him against the wall and handcuffed him. His young daughter watched from the hallway, her eyes wide with fear. She didn't understand why they were taking her daddy away. It was a scene of chaos and confusion. Carlos kept repeating he was innocent. He said he was at home with his family on the night of the crime. He had an alibi, a real, verifiable alibi. But the police were not listening. They had their man. The victim had identified him. In their minds, his denials were just the predictable lies of a guilty person. He was shoved into the back of a police car. The door slammed shut, sealing him in metal and plexiglass. As the car pulled away, he looked back at his wife and daughter on the porch. Their figures grew smaller and smaller. This was a nightmare he could not wake from. He was being accused of a violent crime he knew nothing about. He was being taken away from his family, his job, his entire life. The foundation of his world had crumbled in minutes, and as the police car sped toward the station, one terrifying thought echoed, "How do you prove you did not do something?" At the police station, the case against Carlos de Leon began to solidify. The cornerstone of the prosecution's argument was Sarah Jenkins's eyewitness testimony. She was unwavering in her identification. In interviews and later in official statements, she described the chilling certainty she felt when she saw his face. To the detectives and the district attorney, her story was powerful and compelling. She was a sympathetic victim, and her confidence made her a very believable witness. The prosecution started building their narrative around her testimony, painting a picture of a brutal attacker who had finally been unmasked. They were sure they could win a conviction on her word alone.
"I saw a man running from the area. I'm pretty sure it was him."
This second, albeit less certain, identification added another layer to the prosecution's case. It seemed to corroborate Sarah's story, creating a powerful illusion of proof. The media frenzy added fuel to the fire. Carlos de Leon's mugshot was plastered all over the news. He was labeled the Maple Creek Monster. News reports detailed the crime and highlighted the two eyewitness identifications. They rarely mentioned the lack of physical evidence. They did not talk about Carlos's alibi or his steadfast claims of innocence. The public, hungry for a villain, saw the face of one in the grainy photo on their television screens. In the court of public opinion, Carlos was tried and convicted long before he ever set foot in a courtroom. The pressure on the system to deliver a guilty verdict was now immense. Carlos was assigned a public defender. His lawyer was overworked with a caseload that was already stretched to its breaking point. He listened to Carlos's story and his alibi. Carlos insisted he was at home watching a movie with his wife on the night of the attack. His wife confirmed it. But an alibi from a spouse is often seen as biased and unreliable by juries. His lawyer knew they were facing an uphill battle. It was their word against the powerful, emotional testimony of two eyewitnesses, including the victim herself. The weight of the so-called evidence was crushing, and the path to proving Carlos's innocence seemed to be disappearing before their eyes. The arrest of Carlos de Leon sent a wave of relief through Maple Creek. The town had been living under a shadow of fear for weeks. People were afraid to go out after dark. The local convenience store, once a hub of community life, was now a grim reminder of the violence that had shattered their peace. The news that the police had a suspect in custody was met with a collective sigh of relief. The monster had been caught. The nightmare was finally over. Or so they thought. The community placed their complete trust in the police and the justice system. They believed that the right man had been found, and that justice would now be served. This belief was reinforced by the stories that circulated. They talked about the case at the grocery store, at the post office, and over backyard fences. The details, often sensationalized, were repeated until they became accepted as fact. They talked about the bravery of Sarah Jenkins, and had the courage to identify him. They praised the swift work of the police department for getting a dangerous criminal off their streets. No one questioned the process. No one considered the possibility of a mistake. The desire for closure was so strong that it left no room for doubt or skepticism. The narrative was simple and satisfying. A good town had been violated by an evil outsider, and now the heroes in blue had restored order. Carlos de Leon fit the role of the villain perfectly. He no longer lived in Maple Creek, which made him an outsider. His face, now familiar from the news, became a symbol of the threat they had all feared. In the vacuum of real information, rumors and speculation filled the void. This atmosphere of fear and certainty had a profound effect on the case. It created an environment where it was difficult for any dissenting voice to be heard. Anyone who might have suggested, cautioned, or questioned the evidence would have been seen as disloyal or insensitive to the victim. The community's fear demanded a conviction. This put even more pressure on the prosecution to secure one, and it made the job of the defense nearly impossible. How could a jury, drawn from this very community, be expected to remain impartial when they had been living and breathing the story of Carlos de Leon's guilt for weeks? The stage was set for a terrible injustice. Section 6. The lone voice of innocence. Trapped inside his jail cell, Carlos de Leon felt the world closing in on him. He was alone, isolated from his family and everything he knew. The days bled into one another in a monotonous haze of fear and despair. He replayed the night of the crime over and over in his mind. He had been on his couch, next to his wife, watching a movie. He remembered the name of the film. He remembered the snacks they ate. He remembered his daughter waking up from a bad dream and coming into their room. These were the simple, mundane details of an ordinary Tuesday night. Yet, no one seemed to believe him. His reality was being denied, replaced by a fictional narrative in which he was a violent criminal. His wife was his only link to the outside world, his only source of hope. She visited him as often as she could, her face etched with worry but her eyes full of determination. She believed him without a shadow of a doubt. She was his alibi. She tirelessly repeated their story to his lawyer, to investigators, to anyone who would listen. But her words were often dismissed as the desperate pleas of a loyal wife trying to protect her husband. They saw her not as a credible witness, but as a woman blinded by love. The frustration was maddening. They were two people screaming the truth into a storm that refused to hear them. His public defender did his best with the limited resources he had. He filed motions to challenge the eyewitness identification procedures. He argued that the photo lineups were suggestive and that the witnesses' memories were unreliable. He presented Carlos's alibi, backed by his wife's testimony, but it all felt like chipping away at a mountain with a tiny hammer. The prosecution's case, built on the emotional power of the victim's testimony, seemed insurmountable. The lawyer warned Carlos that going to trial would be incredibly risky. A jury would likely be swayed by Sarah Jenkins's story, and a conviction could mean a sentence of decades in prison. They offered Carlos a plea deal. Plead guilty to a lesser charge, and he would receive a significantly shorter sentence. It was a devil's bargain.
A choice between maintaining his innocence and risking the rest of his life behind bars, or admitting to a crime he did not commit in exchange for the chance to one day see his family again. The pressure to take the deal was immense. It was presented as the smart option, the only logical way out of an impossible situation. But Carlos refused. He could not bring himself to say he was guilty. He looked his lawyer in the eyes and said, "I can't. I didn't do it."
It was a courageous stand, the lone voice of innocence against a system convinced of his guilt. Section 1. The cold reality of a cage. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. For Carlos de Leon, life had shrunk to the size of a small concrete box. The world he knew, filled with the warmth of his family, the satisfaction of a hard day's work, was gone. It was replaced by the monotonous, soul-crushing routine of incarceration, the clanging of steel doors, the distant shouts of other inmates, the bland taste of institutional food. He spent countless hours lying on his thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, his mind a whirlwind of fear, anger, and disbelief. He was a man suspended in time, trapped in a waking nightmare. The legal machinery outside his cell slowly ground towards his trial. His interactions with the outside world were filtered through thick glass. Conversations came over a crackling telephone receiver. Visits from his wife Maria were both a lifeline and a source of profound pain. Seeing her anguish, and the hardship his absence caused their daughter, tormented him. He would try to be strong for her, to reassure her the truth would come out. But behind his brave face, despair was a constant companion. The optimism and easygoing nature he once had were being chipped away by the relentless stress and isolation of confinement. He was no longer just Carlos de Leon, husband and father. He was inmate number 734, a number in a system that had already judged him. The legal process was slow and confusing. His public defender arrived with stacks of dense documents. They talked about motions, discovery, jury selection. It all felt abstract, disconnected from the simple, brutal fact of his innocence. He would repeat his alibi, over and over, hoping the words would carry weight. He described the movie he and Maria watched, the color of the blanket on their couch, small, insignificant details that became critical evidence, but the system seemed uninterested in his truth. It focused only on the prosecution's story. Sleep offered little escape, nights were plagued by nightmares. He dreamed of the crime he never committed. Through the attacker's eyes, he saw Sarah Jenkins' terrified face, then woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. The psychological toll was immense. Anxiety and powerlessness wore him down. He was in a cage of steel and concrete, and of suspicion and accusation. With each passing day, the hope of freedom grew dimmer, further out of reach. Behind the scenes, a quiet battle was being fought by those who believed in Carlos's innocence. Maria, refusing to be a passive victim, took matters into her own hands. With the little money she had left, she hired a private investigator, a retired detective named Frank Miller. He was old school, a skeptic by nature. He'd seen the system fail too many times to take anything at face value. He agreed to look into the case, not because he was sure Carlos was innocent, but because the police investigation looked sloppy. He started from scratch, re-interviewing people, looking for leads the police had ignored. Frank's first stop, the neighborhood around the convenience store. He went door to door, speaking with residents the police never questioned. He discovered something interesting. An elderly woman 2 blocks away remembered a car speeding off. She said she looked out her window and saw an old, dark-colored sedan, possibly a Ford, and one racing with its headlights off. That detail was never in any police report. Carlos de Leon drove a red pickup truck. A different vehicle pointed to a different suspect. Meanwhile, Carlos's public defender prepared for trial. He needed an alternative theory, not just to poke holes. He researched other robberies in surrounding counties months before and after Maple Creek. He found a pattern. 3 other convenience store robberies fit a similar description. In 2 of those, the robber drove a dark-colored Ford sedan. Tentative connection, but a start. Not enough to free Carlos yet, but glimmers of hope. A parallel investigation, not for quick convictions, but for the truth. Frank, the public defender, working separately but toward the same goal, sharing information, piecing together a puzzle the police had declared solved, building a case for innocence, brick by painstaking brick. Carlos sat in his cell, unaware a small, dedicated team was fighting for his life in a battle no one else could see. Section 6. The Devil's Bargain. As the trial date loomed closer, the pressure on Carlos intensified. The prosecutor approached his lawyer with a final offer. It was the same plea deal as before, but this time it came with an ultimatum. Plead guilty to a lesser charge of aggravated assault, they would recommend a sentence of 5 years, with the possibility of parole in 3. Refuse and be convicted of armed robbery or attempted murder, and face 25 years to life. This was his last chance to avoid dying in prison. The public defender laid out the offer in the jail's sterile meeting room. He explained the risks of a trial in brutal, honest terms. Juries are unpredictable, and the emotional testimony of a victim like Sarah Jenkins could overwhelm doubts about evidence or timelines. They will see her, and they will want someone to pay, the lawyer explained. Right now, you are the only one they have to blame. He urged Carlos to seriously consider the deal. It was a terrible choice, but it offered a definite end to the nightmare, a date on a calendar when he might be free again. The decision was pure agony for Carlos. Admitting guilt would mean lying. It would mean validating everyone who had called him a monster. It would mean his daughter growing up thinking her father was a violent criminal. The very thought was nauseating. But the alternative was more terrifying. Never holding his wife again. Never seeing his daughter graduate. Never seeing his daughter get married. Growing old and dying alone in a cell for something he did not do. A prospect too horrifying to contemplate. 3 years of his life in exchange for a chance to reclaim the rest. It was a devil's bargain, a choice between his integrity and his future. He spent days agonizing. He spoke with Maria over the phone, her voice choked with tears. She said she'd support him no matter what, but he could hear the unspoken fear. She was terrified of losing him forever. In the end, with a heavy heart, Carlos told his lawyer he'd consider the deal. He felt like he was betraying himself, but losing everything was worse. The system had worn him down. Just as he was about to surrender, the lawyer got a call from the PI, Frank. "Tell your client not to take any deal," Frank said. "I think I found something. Something on a video." Okay. That was the call that stopped everything. Section 1. The 11th hour call. Carlos de Leon was on the verge of surrender. The weight of the system had pressed down on him until he could barely breathe. Then, the phone rang in his public defender's office. An unexpected interruption. It was Frank Miller, but the private investigator. The words through the receiver were quiet but electric with importance. "Don't let him take it. Tell him to hold on, just a little longer. I found something." Frank explained his breakthrough. During his relentless canvassing of the area around the crime scene, he had discovered that a small, family-owned auto repair shop was located just down the street from the convenience store. The shop had a single old security camera mounted on its roof, pointing down the road. It was a long shot, but Frank had asked the owner if he still had the footage from the night of the robbery, months ago. The owner, a gruff but helpful man, grumbled about his ancient system. He explained the camera recorded over itself every 30 days. By all accounts, the footage should have been long gone. But by some miracle, it was not. The owner remembered that the VCR connected to the camera had malfunctioned the day after the robbery. He had unplugged it, meaning to fix it, but had never gotten around to it. The tape from that night was still inside the machine, untouched. It was a stunning piece of luck, a 1 in a million chance. Frank raced over to the shop, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and dread. He carefully ejected the dusty cassette, a relic from another era. This forgotten tape held the potential to either confirm Carlos's guilt, or, just maybe, provide the key to his freedom. Section 2. The Forgotten Tape. Frank Miller handled the VHS tape as if it were a priceless artifact. He didn't dare play it in the shop owner's dusty VCR. Instead, he took it to a professional video forensics lab to have it carefully digitized. The process was slow and nerve-wracking. Carlos's lawyer managed to get a short extension from the court, buying them precious time. Back in his cell, Carlos knew nothing of the specifics. Finally, the call came. The lab had successfully digitized the footage. Frank and the public defender gathered in a small, darkened office to watch it for the first time. They clicked the play button. A grainy, black and white image flickered to life on the monitor. The camera's view was wide, showing the quiet, empty street on the night of the robbery. Then, they saw it. The timestamp read 9:46 p.m. A car appeared at the far end of the street, moving quickly. It was a dark, four-door sedan, just as the elderly neighbor had described. The driver's side door opened. A figure emerged. The figure on the screen was a ghost. The man in the video was of a similar height and build to Carlos, but even in the poor quality footage, there were clear differences. His hair was longer, his gait was different, and most importantly, a dark mark on his face. Right above his left eye, a scar, the exact detail Sarah Jenkins had mentioned. It was not a mistake. The video was a bombshell. It did not just suggest Carlos was innocent, it provided a clear image of another, much more likely, suspect. The public defender immediately filed an emergency motion, submitting the digitized video as new evidence. The clip was short, only about 30 seconds of action, but it was the most powerful 30 seconds of footage he had ever seen in his legal career. It was the moment the entire case pivoted. The narrative was about to be shattered into a million pieces. Section 4. The narrative shatters. The emergency hearing was convened with a palpable sense of urgency. The courtroom was packed. The prosecution team, initially dismissive of the defense's claims of new evidence, now looked visibly uneasy. The judge ordered the courtroom lights to be dimmed. The grainy black and white footage played on a large screen for everyone to see. A hush fell over the room as the dark sedan pulled up, as the ghostly figure ran from the car, and as the scar above his eye became, momentarily, visible. You could feel the air leave the room. The video played, again, and then a third time. The undeniable truth was looping on the screen for all to witness. The prosecutor's face was a mask of disbelief, slowly morphing into dawning horror. His entire case, built on the seemingly unshakable foundation of eyewitness testimony, had just crumbled. The video did not just create reasonable doubt, it created a certainty of error. It was impossible to look at the man on that screen and still believe that Carlos de Leon was the perpetrator. The defense lawyer stood and, in a calm, steady voice, walked the court through the evidence, the car, the timeline, and the scar. He then presented a picture of Carlos de Leon, pointing out the clear absence of any such facial marking.
That's him, not the other one. That's the man who attacked me.
The narrative had not just been challenged, it had been completely obliterated. The story of a brave victim identifying her attacker had been replaced by the tragic reality of a traumatized woman making a terrible, understandable mistake. The story of a swift and successful police investigation was now a story of tunnel vision and a rush to judgment. The emotional fallout was immediate and immense. For Carlos's family, it was a tidal wave of relief so powerful it felt like a physical blow. For the prosecution and police, it was a moment of profound public failure. The case against Carlos de Leon was not just falling apart, it was spontaneously combusting.
Charges dismissed.
A sob of pure relief from Maria de Leon. After months of fighting, the truth had explosively come to light. A forgotten piece of tape had saved him. The release process was swift. Hours after the hearing, Carlos walked out of county jail, not as inmate number 734, but as a free man. He squinted in the bright afternoon sun. Maria ran to him. Sophia ran to him. They collapsed into a tearful embrace. The police department, the district attorney's office, both were forced to publicly apologize. The case became a textbook example of confirmation bias, the dangers of relying too heavily on eyewitness testimony, especially when not supported by physical evidence. Investigators were forced to answer hard questions. Why didn't they canvass more thoroughly? Why dismiss the victim's scar description? Pressure to close the case led to catastrophic consequences. The unraveling was the beginning of a new investigation. They had a face. They had a car. They had a clear direction. Focus shifted to the man with the scar above his eye. Investigators pulled still frames and ran facial recognition. They cross-referenced the dark sedan with records. The hunt for the real attacker was on with renewed intensity. The investigation moved quickly. The clear image of his face, particularly the distinctive scar, was a powerful lead. Detectives circulated the still frame to law enforcement agencies in neighboring counties. It did not take long to get a hit. His name was Victor Rodriguez. He was a career criminal with a long history of theft and assault, and most damningly, he had a prominent scar just above his left eye. Police tracked Victor Rodriguez to a rundown apartment complex. When they moved in to arrest him, he did not resist. The evidence was overwhelming. In his apartment, they found clothing that matched what the attacker wore in the security footage. The dark Ford sedan was recovered abandoned. When confronted with the video, Victor confessed to the Maple Creek robbery and assault and to other similar crimes. The news of Victor Rodriguez's arrest and confession was the final, definitive exoneration for Carlos de Leon. The true face of guilt was now public, and it looked nothing like Carlos. The community of Maple Creek was forced to confront its own rush to judgment. Sarah Jenkins, the victim, expressed profound remorse for her role in the misidentification, though no one blamed her. Carlos and his family began the long, difficult process of rebuilding their lives. The apology from the state felt hollow, and the financial settlement they eventually received could never truly compensate for the lost time, the emotional trauma, and the damage to his reputation. The experience had left scars on all of them, invisible wounds that would take years to heal. His case became a powerful, haunting reminder of how fragile justice can be and how a single, overlooked piece of evidence can mean the difference between a life destroyed and a life reclaimed. The guilty party is behind bars, serving a long sentence. The innocent man is free. On paper, the ledgers are balanced. Justice, delayed and diverted, was finally served. But for Carlos de Leon and his family, the story does not end so neatly. The echoes of his wrongful accusation still reverberate through every aspect of their lives. Carlos de Leon and his family from a distance, walking together in a park, trying to rebuild a normal life. At the heart of this case lies a profound and unsettling truth about human perception. We trust our eyes. We believe what we see is an accurate recording of reality. The human mind is not a video camera. Memory is reconstructive, fragile, and malleable. It is easily influenced by trauma. It can be altered by suggestion, and it changes with the simple passage of time. The initial description Sarah gave, of a man with a scar, was the most accurate detail. But the flawed identification procedure began to contaminate that memory. They showed her a yearbook. Then they staged a lineup centered on the suspect they'd already chosen. This case shows how evidence-gathering methods can create evidence. Experts advocate reforms, double-blind lineups, instructing witnesses, the perpetrator may not be present, and documenting initial confidence. Treat eyewitness testimony with caution, without fingerprints, without DNA, without a lucky security tape. Carlos de Leon's protestations would have been a whisper. The hero of this story was an old security camera. The VHS tape did not have an agenda, it simply recorded the photons of light that fell on it that night. It captured a 30-second slice of objective reality, a silent, grainy truth that had the power to dismantle a mountain of human error. This case is a testament to the growing importance of video evidence. Cameras are everywhere now. They provide new opportunities to verify alibis and reconstruct scenes. But reliance on video raises questions about privacy and surveillance. Video evidence itself is not immune to misinterpretation. We must demand full, unedited context. The story of Carlos de Leon ends not with a question, but with a haunting imperative. We must demand a justice system that is relentlessly self-critical, humble enough to acknowledge its own capacity for error, and brave enough to correct it. Because justice is not an abstract concept. It is the life of a man on a couch watching a movie with his family. And sometimes the only thing standing between that man and a life in a cage is a grainy ghost on a forgotten video, a silent witness from an unblinking eye.